fiscal stimulus, it means tax cuts, extra public spending. How big do you think it would be, and how big do economists say it should be to make an impact?
Well, economists' record on getting this thing right over the past year have been pretty lousy, so I don't think we should necessarily look for a sensible consensus there. I would imagine that what we're talking about is a stimulus equivalent to about 1% of GDP, maybe a little bit more. Not as big, perhaps, as some of the economists have been saying we should be looking for, but still pretty substantial. I think what I'm going to be, though, particularly focused on is this borrowing figure for next year. It's plainly going to be, we're plainly going to be borrowing 100 billion plus in 2009 to 2010. We haven't, as a proportion of GDP, borrowed as much as that outside of a war in recent decades. You have to go back to the Second World War to see public borrowing in a single year as great as that. We never got to that in the terrible 70s financial crisis when Dennis Healey went cap in hand to the IMF. We didn't quite get to that when Norman Lamont had that great crisis after the ERM exit. There are some people saying that that borrowing figure for next year could be as much as £120 billion. That's a colossal sum of money for any government to borrow in a single year.
And he will have to tell us today how he's going to repay it, or we could be into a full-blown sterling crisis if not. Nick, this budget, and let's just call it a budget now because that's what it is, this November budget is setting out the battle lines, I would suggest, political battle lines between the main parties from now to the run-up to the election and probably beyond?
Well, first of all, it is tearing up the settlement that we've got used to. For the first time since the Labour government of the 1970s, income tax rates are going to be changed. That tears up what Margaret Thatcher did. It tears up what New Labour said they would do when they said that they wouldn't increase either the basic or the higher rate. And you're right, Andrew, the aim of the Chancellor and Gordon Brown is to define the new politics from now through the next election. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean this, really, that they will try and be open with people. I'm told by one of the Chancellor's aides there will be no talk of a tax bombshell when he sits down because everything will have been spelt out.
Full disclosure.
We will know it all. Usually we sit in this studio with the red book saying, what about table 3 and subsection B? Normally we get an expert in 2 days' time who says, hello, I've just found a secret tax rate. The claim, and it's a mighty big claim, is that we won't need to do that. Why? Because the Chancellor wants to be able to do this, to say to his political opponents, we're squeezing spending, you can't squeeze it further. And secondly, we're putting taxes up on the rich. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to actually raise taxes, you Tories, for the poor and not for the rich?
I'm not sure he believes you.
I got to tell you, I've been following these things.
I did use the word claim.
When we get to the book, we find some quite interesting stuff. But I think you're absolutely right there. I mean, I think that there's both big economics here. There's also big politics, and in particular, I think the politics on spending is going to be fascinating.
Okay, well, we've got lots to talk about. Now, Naga, what specifically